That's right. Grab your snackies and a cold one, because we're doing a lore dive today. Jumping into how, yet again, From Software just could not help but dump a bunch of Lovecraftian influences all over the drawing room floor while they were developing this game. But I'm not complaining about it. And with this being a bigger game, there's even more Lovecraftian influences than before. I was actually shocked when I noticed them because some things are directly referenced, such as outer gods. It's literally a direct reference. There's outer gods in Lovecraftian stories. These guys are pretty good at plagiarizing, aren't they? Just kidding, just kidding. Seriously, just kidding. Like, these are obviously like fanboys, and these are not just references. It's an homage to the art of those they look up to. So this might end up being a small series because there is more than one outer god in Elden Ring, but either way I need to get something out of the way real quick. We've all heard of H.P. Lovecraft, but in case you haven't, we'll touch base with him briefly. Surely you've heard of Cthulhu, or at least seen a creature that resembles Cthulhu. A great, huge creature with tentacles coming from its face. A head so big it resembles an elephant's in terms of size. Usually coming out of the water. Almost like Godzilla, which, yes, Godzilla may have taken inspiration from Cthulhu, and more than just the water thing, but that's like a story for another day. We're here to talk about H.P. Lovecraft. And in order to understand some of this, we first need to mention the philosophy he essentially became the founder of. Cosmicism. Cosmicism is the literary philosophy developed by the American writer H.P. Lovecraft, stating that there is no recognizable divine presence, such as God, in the universe, and that humans are particularly insignificant in the larger scheme of the intergalactic existence. The scientific study of the cosmos. Okay, calm down. It's gonna be fine. We're gonna go back to Elden Ring references really quick. We just had to get that out of the way real quick. Everything's gonna be okay. Alright, Cosmicism is not trying to be as dark as one may initially view it, but it is kind of saying that humans are truly insignificant and we are nothing compared to the vastness of the cosmos. This is where Cosmicism begins, but through this idea, many amazing literary works were created and eventually developed into what is known as the Cthulhu mythos. Other writers besides H.P. Lovecraft were recognized for their work, and it was encouraged for others to add to the Cthulhu mythos that Lovecraft had started. During Lovecraft's lifetime, for instance, he recognized other writers and their creations within his own stories, and one of those characters I want to go over today. Hastur. Hastur was not made by H.P. Lovecraft, but recognized the being in one of his own works, giving credit to the creature in the Cthulhu mythos. The name of that H.P. Lovecraft story was Whisperer in Darkness, and if you do Hyetta's questline in Elden Ring, she is a follower of the Frenzied Flame, who literally follows it blindly. Literally blindly. She can't see. Hearing whispers in the dark is pretty much her entire character. She even claims to hear the voice of the Frenzied Flame at one point. Hyetta's questline in Elden Ring is based off of Hyetta the Shepherd, a story by Ambrose Pierce, where Hastur was first introduced. Hastur is known for many forms, but one of them is the Yellow King, which seems to be a nod to the yellow Frenzied Flame. But he can take many forms as an avatar, his default being an octopus-like being. Hastur tries to spread madness amongst the earthly people, and the Frenzied Flame tries to spread madness through the lands between. And it is believed that Hastur wished to come to our land and bring madness to all. Kind of like how Shibruri tries to convince the player to bring chaos to the world by spreading madness throughout the lands between through the yellow Frenzied Flame. Hastur was known eventually as a Great Old One, which is not quite the same as an outer god, which might explain why the Greater Will and the Frenzied Flame seem similar, yet different in some way. Their influences might be slightly different. The game literally has outer gods within its story. You don't need to theorycraft for that information, it's mentioned throughout the game. So it doesn't surprise me at all that From Software used Great Old Ones for the inspiration of other cosmic beings. Apparently, Hastur is Cthulhu's half-brother, which I didn't know until I was researching for this video. So hey look, we all learned something today, isn't that fun? But apparently, Cthulhu and Hastur do not see eye to eye, which very much reminds me of the relationship between the greater will and the frenzied flame, as we learn from Hyetta.
The words of the three fingers. As your maiden, allow me to divine them. All that there is came from the one great. Then came fractures, and births, and souls. But the greater will made a mistake. Torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, every one born of the mistake. And so, what was borrowed must be returned, melted all away with the yellow chaos flame, until all is one again.
Hastur doesn't ever seem to reveal his face, which is something I noticed with Shabriri. For some reason, when we meet Shabriri, Shabriri is covering his face with his hands, trying to hide something, it seems. What this is we do not actually know, but Hastur seems to always wear a mask, and is always covering his face. What this similarity means, to be honest, I don't know. I just thought I'd mention it. I just thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd mention it. And we know that Hastur can take many forms, just like it seems like whoever the frenzied flame is, or whoever they are in servitude to, seems to potentially have the power to do so as well. Hastur mainly corrupts the mind of artists to try to influence a more maddened world. And that got me thinking of the wandering merchants that were buried alive with the three fingers, which is as close to the frenzied flame as you can get in the lands between. And these wandering merchants all played music, a form of art. And that got me thinking too. Who made all of the beautiful paintings that we find in the lands between? And if you know where they come from, let me know in the comments, but we do find a lot of paintings, just abandoned, beautiful paintings. Pristine, all throughout the lands between, seemingly abandoned, as if someone rounded them all up and threw them in the subterranean shunning grounds with the three fingers. Oh wait a minute, that's what happened to the merchants. Anyways, that's just a theory though. Hastur used a certain sign as a way to spread his influence and his madness. Apparently, anyone who sees this sign is already doomly fated, because anyone who sees this sign is capable of being influenced or even controlled by Hastur. And his followers would often say, "Have you seen the yellow sign?" If none of this was convincing you of any of the similarities yet, here is a picture of the sign that Hastur uses to control people. It's an exact replica of the three fingers, or more accurately, the three fingers are an exact replica of Hastur's sign. And if you notice, the three fingers ending is the only ending that you are permanently locked into if you even so much as meet the three fingers, as if you are being mind controlled. And the only way to undo this is by doing Millicent's questline to obtain Miquella's needle, which can in some cases apparently stop the meddling of outer gods. So the only way to stop this influence is to literally use the power to prevent the meddling of an outer god. And something I want to point out. Many people believe the Frenzied Flame is an outer god, but others will point out that the Frenzied Flame may be tied to the greater will in some way. Ratatoskr mentions this in his recent video, for instance, and I don't necessarily disagree. By the way, if you haven't checked him out, check out Ratatoskr, great YouTuber. But I do want to point something out that I noticed. Item descriptions are usually how we piece together the lore of these games, and Miquella's needle specifically states that it can be used to prevent the meddling of outer gods, and that the only way we know of Miquella's needle being used in this game is two different ways. It being used in Millicent's quest with her Scarlet Rot, seemingly the meddling of an outer god, and of course the most impactful, reverting the Frenzied Flame. And I will quote Miquella's needle here. one of the unalloyed gold needles that Mikola crafted to ward away the meddling of outer gods, capable of subduing the flame of frenzy if inherited, allowing one to cheat fate and avoid becoming Lord of Frenzied Flame. So I don't know that that necessarily confirms that the Frenzied Flame is an outer god, but the item description does seem to imply that, and it is hard to argue that without another piece of refutable evidence. Which is why I love looking into these references, which some people seem to think aren't very important, but they give us an insight as to what the developers were thinking when they made these characters. For instance, if Hastur is technically known as a great old one, then we know that that is not actually an outer god. But we do know from Lovecraftian literature that great old ones and other great cosmic beings are actually in servitude to outer gods. For instance, Azathoth is recognized as the greatest cosmic being that we may be aware of, because as far as we know in Lovecraftian literature, everything that we know is all a dream, dreamt up by Azathoth. And if he was to awaken, all would cease to be. So these great cosmic beings are in servitude to these outer gods, lulling them, maintaining their sleep. For if they were to awaken, all would end. So if you look back at that item description again and think that, okay, maybe Hastur or the Frenzied Flame could have still been what was being prevented, subdued here in this case, but it could have still been the meddling of a higher being, an outer god, that we may not know of, and that the Frenzied Flame is actually in servitude to this higher deity, an outer god. But that's enough theory crafting for today. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. I'll be doing some more of these. If you haven't checked out my other lore videos or other content, I make a ton of Elden Ring stuff. I'll catch you later. Peace.